Originally released March of 1997, Castlevania Symphony of the Night stood out from the crowd by unabashedly being itself. In an era of modern 3D reimagining of classic 2D games, Castlevania bucked the trend, sticking to its 2D platforming roots, and in doing so, produced one of the greatest games of all time. The new generation of systems' power and speed led the way to a push for 3D games, more because we could than for any other reason. It seemed 3D was the future of gaming, and most companies jumped on the bandwagon with both feet. Konami made a different decision. Instead of starting from scratch with a technology in its infancy, Konami would use the new power and capacities of the systems to make the 2D game you always wanted. It's huge, it's intricate, it's beautiful, and all those little flaws from the earlier game have been ironed out. The original games had been some of the most popular games of the previous generation of systems. The Castlevania series chronicles the exploits of the Belmonts in their unending battle against the vampire Dracula. The whip-wielding Belmonts have been defeating Dracula about once every century or so for the last 300 years, give or take a couple of decades. Often the battle with Dracula in a specific era would span several games. This is the case with Symphony of the Night. Symphony starts with the end of Rondo of Blood. You play as Richter as he defeats Dracula at the end of Rondo. Then the game jumps 4 years to when Richter goes missing and Dracula's castle reappears. This is when Dracula's half-vampire son digs himself up from his self-imposed eternal slumber. Alucard dashing through the woods and jumping past the gate, helplessly trying to close fast enough, really sets the tone. You are a force to be reckoned with. Alucard is more, this game is more. This is the moment the Metroidvania game model bore fruit. Castlevania stepped up from action platformer to outright action RPG. Its influence is obvious in many of the roguelike games of today. Examples are Rogue Legacy and its parody of the Belmonts, and Dead Cells, Symphony's sole successor. Alucard almost immediately has all his stuff ganked by death. Yeah, death, as in scythe-wielding, grim-reaping death. It's a nice touch letting you start with some nice stuff and taking it from you. Well, it's maddening. That anger helps you push past an early game that can be brutal at first. A big reason for this is a lack of equipment. It can be frustrating starting so weak, but it makes your rise to power all the sweeter. And powerful you will be. Eventually you'll have a massive battle chest filled to the brim with cool weapons and awesome armors. Everything from nunchaku to giant greatswords, not to mention the magical weapons with strange properties. The shield rod activates any of the game's many shields' awesome, screen-crushing super attacks. In addition to the massive roster of one-time use items like dynamite and shuriken, you have access to full complements of magical items. My favorite was the Bible that flies around you all crazy. On top of all that, Alucard has a bunch of vampire powers. He can cast a laundry list of spells by hitting the right input. He gets a familiar. He can shapeshift into a bat, a wolf, and mist, and then later acid mist. That's right, you can just float around as acid mist, melting your enemies. By the end of the game, you feel almost unbeatable, and strangely, this works to the game's advantage. Despite the fact there's only one store in the game, it offers the coolest piece of equipment in the game. The Replicator duplicates one-time use items infinitely. This awesome tool costs so much that you have to grind for it. This task is made far more palpable due to the myriad of flavor weapons. My favorite flavor weapon was a magical pair of brass knuckles. It gives you a flaming punch, a fury of blows, a sweet jump kick, and lets you throw a Hadouken. Between being so weak you could cry and power overwhelming, you'll save the Belmonts, beat death, and get your stuff back. Not to mention, defeat your dad before he kills all of humanity. The coolest twist is the false ending. Halfway through the game, you get a sad ending worth getting, if just to see it once. If you win the right way, a second castle appears, floating upside down above the first castle. This second castle holds the second half of the game. On top of all that, this game is as aesthetically pleasing as games get. Filled to the brim with giant monsters and scream-filling end guys. Its soundtrack is as large and operatic as the game itself. Every weapon looks distinctive, awesome, and has its own beautifully animated moveset. Alucard moves with an otherworldly nature. If the game has one weakness, it's the voice acting. It's flat and, well, flat. Still a small gripe, all things considered. In the end, you will have leveled up 50 to 60 times over about that many hours, and are all the richer for it. Ultimately, Castlevania Symphony of the Night is an unparalleled example of attention to detail produced by master craftsmen. It's as thick as a flat game gets. Most of all, it's fun. Thanks for watching another episode of Badgering Nerdworks Presents Player Select. Don't forget to share, subscribe, and let us know what you think down in the comments section below. Check out our other videos on the left, and if you'd like to receive notifications, click the bell icon. We'll see you next time. Thanks for coming.